Hi, it's John Binney, and I was asked today about my work that I do with removing negative energies and entities from people, from clients, and from myself, and the different practices and advice I can offer around the free will decision of whether energies or entities should be returned to the source of this universe or not. So let me give some context, first of all. In my work as a spiritual mentor and a quantum energy clearer, healer, I started my journey by clearing negative energies and entities from people and like exorcisms, like removing entities that had overtaken people. And in that journey, I learned very quickly that as I remove an entity from someone, so in these sessions, I create a safe space. I set up like a protective energy around my client. I make sure I have my client's consent to perform this. So I am, I'm acting on behalf of the client's own free will, and my clients have sovereignty over their own bodies, just like I have, sovereignty and dominion over my body. And what happens is I call forth my spirit guides. I work with archangels like Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael. And together I work with for instance, for a small entity attachment, like a small dark, I call them like a leech, and they could like attach to any kind of energetic wounding on you. When they attach, I just bring in my little light sword, like I shrink it down to the size of a knife, and then I cut like gently around that entity to physically detach it from the client. And then I hold the entity in my hand and I hand it to Archangel Michael and I say, please return to source or never return here again. And then I psychically see Archangel Michael like take the entity from my hand and travel to either to source or like to far away. And that is a free will decision. And free will is one of the founding like universal laws or principles of this entire universe of our reality. And so if you compromise free will, if free will didn't exist, this universe would be chaos. It already is a jungle, right? But it would be chaos in the respect that, one being could dictate to every other being without any consequence. And that is not, it's not a happy, healthy universe. Like a happy, healthy universe is diverse and there's constant, unique expressions of the source of this universe, like through each of us as beautiful, unique individual souls, and source experiencing itself, like love experiencing itself back, like when we share love with others, like we're two unique beings sharing unique love with each other, and that's source experiencing itself. Take away that free will, and it's not good, right? Like I would hate a world where, or a universe where you could just force people to love you, for example. That would be horrible. Imagine being forced to love. So with the questions that I've had is like, is it okay to just take a negative or dark entity and push it, like force it into source? The answer is no. It's a really bad idea. I recommend you do not ever do that. Never, ever, 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 push a being against its will into source. It is not up to us as individuals what, the vibration of an entity, whether they're dark, light, or anything in between on that whole spectrum. It's not up to us to judge that and decide. So first of all, and then secondly, it's not up to us to judge which energies and entities are, allowed to continue on their path and just do what they do, or have to be forcibly pushed into source. And that's at the very heart of my core beliefs. And I know of some people that have gone against this. in the past, and they've learned really hard lessons. Like, first of all, if you're working with archangels, your spirit guides, and you do something like that, you forcibly push like a dark or negative entity into source, they will be unhappy. Like so Archangel Michael, like, it's one of his big jobs, right? That's like, he is both the darkness and the light, and a clearer and a protector. And he's done this like gazillions of times. And so if you go against the will of a being, it's like a universal crime. Like, it's a crime against free will, and it causes like a karmic imbalance. So what that means is that if I took an entity and I pushed it into source against its will, I would then have to pay the karmic price, not my client. I would. And so that would mean whatever, like in my life, like, or future lives, bad things would happen to me to kind of rebalance that, like the consequence of that. Quite what those bad things are, I'll leave the universe to decide. You can imagine they're pretty bad, and that, they'd be proportionate, energetically proportionate to the acts that you took. I'm not going to get into like how on earth can our planet at the moment be under such control and compromise of free will, and that's a whole different video. But what I would shortly describe it as briefly as I can, is that if you can convince an entity to influence them significantly, like us, like ourselves, an entity, if you can convince a human to make a free will choice themselves, or to sleepwalk into making a free will decision, then you do not have to pay a karmic price. That's the theory. That's how the world is currently kind of sleeping through this level of control. But all that's changing, and so many of us are waking up to that. And when you wake up to the fact that your free will is like constantly trying to be compromised, you suddenly realize there's a lot that it goes on in our world that you don't want to subscribe to, and maybe literally subscribe to. Okay. Some of the other questions I had was like, there's other practices, so things like Reiki in particular, but there's other energy practices that people teach, and they may have scripts or kind of mantras, or even a bit like myself, like I'm describing a phrase or phrases that I use. And the first thing I would say is be really discerning and intentional be clear about the meaning and the definition of the words that you say. If you think about words on an energetic level, they are just energetic signatures, and they are an energetic expression of your thoughts and your feelings. They're a manifestation of those. And so if you're reading a script and you're not super sure what it means, or if you're saying like a mantra and not really putting your heart into it, that affects the energy of the output of what you're trying to achieve. So, and I know that in Reiki, like a dear student was like sharing with me some of the scripts that they go through, and we were just chatting through like, what that means to both my students, and then also to myself, and also like everyone gets to decide. It's not up to me, right? I'm not like the karma police. I'm just in this work professionally, and I have my knowings, and I have my experience, and every individual gets to make up their own minds. And so with the Reiki scripts, we were just chatting through like the specifics about, first of all, like releasing, like the actual removal of an entity from a client is, you could argue, against the free will of the entity. However, what overrides that is the sovereignty that each being has, each of us have, of like we have our own free will and our own sovereignty. So if something is attached to the client and the client doesn't want it there, the client can either remove it themselves, or they can ask for our help to be a tool for them to remove it. And it's interesting, right? Because it makes you think, well, hang on, that's like still, affecting the free will of the entity. And yet the entity doesn't get a choice, because the entity has to obey this other universal law, which is that every being is sovereign, and we get to decide like what connects with us and what attaches to us, and vice versa. And so that overrides their initial free will. But as soon as that entity is like out of the kind of auric field, like about 2 meters out from the center of the heart of the client, they're no longer under the jurisdiction of the kind of sovereign boundaries of the client. And therefore, really, they're just, at that point, they're just Joe average being in the universe. They could be at any distance. They could be trillions of light years away. They could be 1 centimeter away. They're just outside of that dominion of the client. And although they may or may not have done terrible things, this entity still has its own free will. It deserves its own free will. And so at that point, it's it's really up to it to make decisions. And although we're still engaged in a conversation with it, often it's seconds after I've removed that entity from the client, and then they're outside of their auric field. That's when I ask archangels to get involved. You can also talk to the entity, and if you're experienced enough, you can open a portal into source with help from your guides or from archangels if you need it, and then show the entity what it's like if they return, like to see that unconditional love that they would have, the loved ones that they'd reconnect with if they return to source, and that really beautiful magical feeling that they could hold in their hearts. But they still get the free will choice as to whether they do that or not. So I feel like that's that. Like it's that simple. There are other questions. So I was also asked, well, what if while the entity is attached to the client, so let's say I've got something attached onto my heart chakra, and I decide to fill it with love, it's a hard one, right? Like if you want to fill an entity with love, and if it's attached to you, you have more dominion over that entity if it's attached to you, or while it's attached to you. But it can still decide whether it accepts or rejects that love. And I see it a bit like with the leech example, where if you filled a leech with love, it would turn from consuming negative energy to then consuming positive energy from the client, and then maybe it would detach. Maybe it would be like, it's kind of opposite world for the leech, and it would want to disconnect and be free. And that that's the decision of the healer and the client, if that's what they want to do. It's not something that I do in my practice. I do send in love energy a lot into clients during a session. I don't do it with the intention of trying to fill an entity with love. When I do work with negative entities, I work with such love and compassion, because the other really important thing to understand here is that a lot of the human desire to want to, this urge we'd have to like banish, negative energies and entities back to source and to never have to worry about them again, is that's not their purpose. Often their purpose has been for good. Like they've been acting out these terrible, like these horrible afflictions on the client for a reason, for higher good. Now, if I be specific, so let's say with one client, I remember vividly, they had a leech attached to their heart, and the leech was like feeding off of this heavy, dark energy on the side and down at the bottom of the heart chakra. And this was like a core wounding. And it felt horrible for the client. Like they knew it was there. They knew that every time they went back to this wounding, this trauma in their childhood, that it would keep expanding this negative feeling. And that led the client to want to work with someone like me. And so when I started working with them, I said absolutely, like this entity is not doing you good. Like it's provoking that trauma. It's like poking the bear of that trauma that you had, and it's doing that to feed. And all of that is absolutely true. And whether what I'm about to say, the entity was aware of what its purpose, its grander purpose was, I don't believe the entity was aware of this. But the whole reason, like the kind of universal purpose of why that entity was there, was because it was drawn there. It's almost like source or the universe was saying, you need to attach to this person, to this client. And then when a healer like John comes along and does work on them, you'll be drawn to that trauma, that childhood trauma. And it was a very almost like a beacon, like the opposite of a lighthouse, like a dark beacon saying, come here and get this healing fixed. If you heal this, you're not just healing this small attachment. And actually the attachment from the entity was largely insignificant. But its role was super significant. And so as I removed the entity, and this happens a lot. I would say about 80% of the time, this is what happens when I remove an entity. And just as I have it in my hand and I'm passing it to Archangel Michael, the entity will speak to me, and the entity will say something very, profound. And it'll be things like, I was here to help, or don't blame me. I was the messenger. I was the one, doing this dark deed on behalf of the greater good. And this kind of more profound statement and reflection is often a reflection of like the kind of higher self of that being. And it is the purpose to share with both myself and the client that although absolutely in the lifetime of that entity, during its attachment to the client, that it absolutely had no positive intentions towards the client, only negative, and it saw the client as food, that actually once it was removed and it could see like it was ready for its next steps to return to source or never return here again, that it was actually working for the greater good and that its soul knew it. And it is a very beautiful form of self-sacrificial love. Like one of the highest forms of love, like sacrificing, like negative entities sacrificing themselves just to bring attention to a client and to bring their attention to healing that he's done is so beautiful. And I feel the tears welling up inside of me. It's like, quite often I just cry, like I'm just crying there, and I'm explaining to the clients, what this entity has done. And I'm not pretending for a moment that this world is all love and light. This universe is all love and light. It's not. It's it's about half, right? And so that other half is absolutely dark and it's horrible. But these negative entities, some are capable, and their souls are capable of such beautiful, incredible, unconditional, self-sacrificial love, these acts of love. And so that's why, for me, like my founding principles of free will and individuals having sovereignty over themselves, their boundaries, of many of the universal laws, I feel like they're just so powerful because they expose this incredible ability for these acts that you just wouldn't expect. And I've seen, like, you know, on the other extreme, like really large, horrifically dark entities doing the most ungodly things to clients, putting them through such horrific experiences, and even intentionally or unintentionally drawing the client to their gift. So, for example, if a demonic entity tries to stop a client from using their third eye abilities, or let's say your third eye ability, to trying to like shut down their third eye, it draws massive attention to the client. The client's like, oh, like I either used to be able to see things more, or now I don't, or I've got headaches, or had headaches, now I don't. Like, it's almost like when the battle starts, it draws this like laser focus of the client, and the client's like, what? What the? So that act alone, just bringing the client's attention to what they need to work on next, is incredibly powerful. And, whilst the darkness has its superpower of deception and illusion, it is light that is more powerful than dark. And so dark convinces light that light is less powerful in its illusion, and yet light is more powerful than dark as long as light remembers that. And so this like beautiful yin and yang. And so I'd just like to connect in with my guides for a moment and just ask if there's any further advice they would like to share. My Lyran guide, Emmett Chal, is just stepping forwards. He helps me a lot with entity removals. He's been there many, many times with me. And so first of all, yeah, he's just saying, absolutely, like these are all the right things. Like what John's saying is right. And it's up to each individual to decide. Like, you have to discern from both from John, are saying, from your own experiences, and from what others tell you or teach you, or what you read in scripture. You have to decide what feels right for you. What is your reality of what universal laws you choose to both define and then to go ahead and execute on. And to be laser clear on your intention. So be really focused on your intention. Words have magic. And underneath the words, the magic that we create, this energy that we create from our thoughts, our feelings, behind these words are all just as powerful. They're all wrapped up together in the energy that we then execute in our action. And to know that he's like laughing and he's just saying, and to know that actually, although this like all sounds like very serious and it's like very grave and dark, it's life and death, like it's actually much lighter and much brighter and more fun than it might, obviously seem. And so we don't need to like disappear down these dark rabbit holes of like all the minutiae of, should I or shouldn't I do this? Like, is this against someone's free will or not? Like to encourage us to feel into it and to practice it in our hearts, like practice that discernment. And if you're not sure, like what your opinion is just listening to this, or you're like a practitioner, like me, doing some sort of energy healing on people or removing entities from people, just to feel into that beautiful opportunity you have to decide in that moment what to do. And so every moment is unique and every moment is different. And you can just place your hand on your heart and just ask. And just give yourself a yes or no question. And that can really, really help you. it can help you decide what to do next. So yeah, that was a real pleasure. It was really beautiful to have those questions. And in my Higher Self Foundational Training course with my class, we're just coming up, we're just about to do week 3, which is about our dream lives. And then week 4, we're moving on to energy and entity removal. And this video I'll definitely include in the curriculum. And I'll make this video public as well, because I feel like it's really important and quite thought-provoking for people. And I'd love to hear your opinions. Please be respectful and nice to your fellow human beings. But yeah, I would encourage people to share any mantras or practices that they found helpful in their journeys. And I hope this finds you well. So thank you. Sending my love from Scotland. I love you.